Chapter 607. I'll finally understand. 3. Darkness engulfed Ashton's metropolis with the passing of the 12th hour. Melissa stared at the scenery outside and sighed. Her features were beautifully illuminated by the lights coming from above as she sat on a tiny stool. Ashton City looks a lot better at night, don't you think? Excuse me. The barista in front of her was taken aback. In spite of the current time in Ashton City, Melissa's orders were absolute, and he was thus forced to work at these hours. Why? Yes, it indeed does look more beautiful. The beauty of the lights coming from the buildings is best appreciated at night. They dispel the darkness brought on by the night. Right. The barista reluctantly nodded his head. If he had to be completely honest, right now all he wanted was to sleep. Additionally, he found Melissa's comments to be incomprehensible, which made the situation rather uncomfortable for him. Regardless, a job was a job and he could only put on a fake smile and nod his head. PFFF. Melissa suddenly let out a small laugh as the cup in her hands loosely hung by the tips of her fingers. Looks like you find my words boring. The barista's face hardened. He had been caught red-handed. Melissa laughed in self-depreciation when she saw his expression. She then waved her hand in his direction. Don't worry, you're not fired. I get it, I'm annoying. Taking a sip of her drink, she smacked it against the counter. I'm one annoying bitch, so do me a favor. Give me another shot. As she raised an eyebrow at the barista, a slight flush developed on the side of her cheeks. At this point, she was acting extremely differently from how she usually did. She was obviously inebriated, as evidenced by her flush and words. I don't think. No point refusing. If you won't give it to me, I'll just get it myself. Melissa stood up from her seat. Sweeping her eyes on the numerous bottles that stood behind the marble counter, her eyes paused toward a certain bottle. 1987 Millionette? Sounds fancy. Setting her eyes on the target, she tried to jump over the counter. Let's stop here. A hand pressed against her shoulder before she could do that. Melissa turned her head. Emma? Amanda. It surprised her to see Emma and Amanda standing behind her. What were they doing here? Emma ignored Melissa while she turned her head to look at Amanda. Looks like you were right, Amanda. She's acting exactly like you said she would. Emichung. Amanda quietly nodded her head. She was currently wearing a one-piece black dress that perfectly highlighted her physique. It was the same dress she wore at the funeral. The same was for Emma. It was clear from their attires that they didn't have time to change. What do you guys want? Melissa's eyes grew clearer as her thoughts started to slowly calm down. How did you get in here? Emma flashed a black card. Melissa's brows twitched when she saw the card. She could faintly recall giving one to Emma in the past when she was begging her for one. Melissa gave her one out of pity. Naturally, she knew about her situation. She was starting to regret that decision right now. What's with that look? You think we wouldn't know what you're thinking about after seeing the state you were in after we returned? Moving to the counter, Emma sat down on a stool. Then, looking at the barista, she pointed at the same bottle Melissa was previously looking at. 1987 Millionette. A glass each. Sure. The barista nodded after taking a short glance at Amanda and Emma. They looked responsible. I thought you were going to stop me from drinking. Why would we? Emma asked while a small pill appeared in her hand. She then handed it to Melissa. Not like I'm worried about getting a hangover with this. Right. Melissa weakly turned her head and sat on a stool beside Emma. Amanda followed her example and sat next to her. Silence permeated the room as the three women sat serenely next to one another. The stillness was allowed to linger since none of the three of them wanted to speak first. Your drinks. The clicking sound of glasses being set down on the counter disturbed the silence. Simultaneously, all three girls reached out for their respective glasses and took a sip. The silence continued for the next minute. You can laugh if you want. The first one to speak was Melissa. Keeping her gaze on the display of drinks before her, she set her glass on the counter. You've seen my memories. You must find it amusing, I suppose. That Melissa Hall, who appears to be so powerful on the outside, really just wants her father's favor. And the only reason why she acts the way she does is because she has no expectations of others. It must be hilarious, truly. Melissa took the drink she set down on the counter and gulped it all in one go. Must be really funny. Nah. Emma set her glass down beside her. Stretching her arms, she frowned. This is uncomfortably tight. Grumbling to herself, she turned her attention back to Melissa. Scratching the side of her cheek, she mumbled, "To be honest, I kind of get how you feel." Emma tapped the tip of the glass. "I could kind of guess why you acted the way you did. It's not like I only knew you from the academy. Ever since we were little, I would always see you try your best to please your father. At one point I was even jealous of you." "Jealous?" Melissa shook her head. "Please, as if anyone would be jealous of me. You'd be surprised actually. Not only is your father the strongest in the world, but you're also incredibly smart. There's many out there that don't have it as good as us." "Smart, huh?" Melissa took off her glasses and wiped them with her clothes. Her eyes strained. If only that was actually useful in this day and age. "You think too little of yourself." Emma rolled her eyes. "You might not realize it, but just your inventions alone have enabled civilization to rise to heights previously seen as unthinkable. One example of that is the magic card system. That invention alone has helped us advance in so many ways. If I were you, I'd simply put more emphasis on myself than on what other people think. It's what I've been doing, and it kind of works like a charm." "That's so." Melissa pursed her lips as she thought of Emma's words. In a way, Melissa could see what Emma was trying to express, but she was still struggling to alter her way of thinking. Her brows furrowed. "I'll keep it in mind." She then tapped on her ring and took out several potions from her dimensional space. A complicated look spread across Melissa's face when she looked at the potions. "What are those?" Emma's curious voice reached her ears. After staring at the potions for a moment, she spoke. "Something that I need to get rid of." Having her memories exposed, seeing Ren's memories and her talk with Emma, Melissa understood that she needed to change. Though a bit late, it was time for her to grow up a little. She realized that she could no longer be who she had been in the past, and getting rid of the potions was the first step in her transformation. Taking another look at the potions before her, Melissa swallowed a mouthful of saliva. "It wouldn't hurt if I took another one." "No shit. Take them." Melissa pushed the potions in Emma's direction. For a brief moment, she almost lost herself in the temptation. Right." Emma took the potions and put them away. Even though she was confused, she still complied. Then she looked at Amanda. "You've been quiet for quite a while now, Amanda. Isn't there something that you want to say?" Amanda's body flinched when she heard Emma's voice. Her reaction startled the two girls, who looked at Amanda with an odd look. Just as she was about to say something, her hand twitched and her eyes darted toward a particular area on the counter. An area where there was a slight stain that came as a result of Melissa's careless drinking. "Amanda." "Yes." Amanda's body flinched once again when she heard Emma's voice. "Did you not hear what we were saying? My God." Emma facepalmed halfway through her sentence as she finally got the gist of the situation. Using her arm, she wiped off the stain. "You happy now?" "For what?" Amanda looked at Emma with a blank and expressionless look. She was clearly trying to feign ignorance of what just happened. "You." Click. The big monitor in front of me turned on when I inserted the black box into the computer processor. It was eerily quiet around me while a dim white light illuminated the area around me. I moved the cursor till a message appeared on the display. "Would you like to play the message?" "Yes, no." Dragging the cursor around the screen, my hand paused. I was starting to hesitate. I let out a nervous breath and tightened my grip on the mouse. Click. I then pressed the top part of the mouse. How should I start this?" A familiar voice echoed throughout the air once I pressed on the mouse, and I lowered my head. Appearing on the screen was Small Snake. He was currently sitting in the same room I was sitting in. No, rather, it looked an awful lot less advanced than what it was at the moment, clearly indicating that this video had been taken quite a while back. Not really sure why I'm even making this video, to be honest. I don't think I'll ever be in a situation where I will have to go on a dangerous mission, but I guess you might never know what will happen in the future. Could just be a video log for me to relieve some of my stress, who knows. Turning his wrist, he checked the time on his watch. Well, since nothing particularly important happened just yet, I won't make this any longer than it has to be. Small Snake. A void suddenly interrupted. Sounded awfully familiar. "Small Snake, where are you?" "Oi, Small Snake." "Ha." Alternating his gaze between the distant door and the camera, Small Snake sighed. Shit, looks like I'll have to cut this video short. Small snake. I'm coming. Extending his hand, the screen turned black. Ha ha ha. A restrained laugh escaped from my lips while my arm covered my mouth and my body trembled. I felt a bundle of emotions rise from deep within my body. I remember this. That day I remember needing Small Snake for something urgent. Was taken aback by his sharp response. I guess it makes sense now. Well, it's been a while. A new image formed on the screen. Small Snake showed up on the display. His physique appeared somewhat drab in comparison to the last time, and beneath his eyes were prominent black rings. His voice also sounded croaky. Scratching his nose, Small Snake leaned back on the chair and blankly looked toward the ceiling without saying anything. So it's been about a month since you've disappeared. From his words I understood that this video was recorded while I was in the monolith. Many think that you're dead, but I know you're not. The fact that Angelica is still doing fine is proof of that. 'Cause you know, the two of you have Small Snake touched his two fingers together. Signed a contract with each other and stuff, so she would definitely know if you were alive or not. And what's the relationship between you two like? No, never mind. I can't do this. Please come back, it's really hard doing this alone. The screen went blank as Small Snake leaned forward and tapped on the keyboard. A new video began to play after that. You're a fucking asshole, you know that? I was slightly taken aback by his sudden outburst. You see, I'm a human too. I've never had you not tell me to shut up after more than 2 phrases. The worst part is that I've become accustomed to it. Small Snake smacked the desk. If before I used to complain whenever you tell me to shut up, I now accept it like it's a given. Not even that, Ryan has also started to pick a couple of things from you, and this is sadly one of the things. I can't do this anymore. Leaning my head against my arm, which was resting on the table, my body trembled as I tried to suppress my laugh. My other hand clenched at my chest, which was hurting. More and more videos began to replay, arousing all sorts of different emotions in me. Your sister is an angel. Should I open up a shrine for her? Remember when she said to apologize to me? Oh God, the face you made. You should have totally seen it. Guess what? Angelica no longer calls me stick-like human anymore. That's progress, I tell you. Wow, just wow. Did you seriously just go on a trip without us just like that? How irresponsible do you have to be? Laughter, anguish, sadness, grief, guilt. Slowly the timer started to reach the end as the videos continued to play. A sense of dread filled me while my eyes tracked the timer. No. I didn't want it to end. Small Snake rubbed his head as he reclined in the chair. He looked much more serious than before. Drumming his fingers on the table, his brows furrowed. I wiped the corner of my eyes and sat up straight. Slowly, Small Snake raised his head and our eyes met. Or at least that was what it felt like. How should I start this? Small Snake crossed his arms and leaned back on the chair. Turning his head, he looked behind him. Bringing his arm over the top of the chair, he scanned the back of the room. Making sure that there was no one there, he sat back down on the chair and sighed. Good thing that no one's here. He murmured in a barely audible tone. Then lifting his head, he stared at the camera. Thinking back at our trips to Henler and Isar, I realized something. Life is really feeble, isn't it? Having stayed in the human domain for as long as I did, I never truly realized just how bad the situation outside was. It's only after having experienced everything myself that I am once again reminded of how meaningless and feeble my life is. Small Snake lowered his head and stared at his shaking hands. Honestly, I'm scared. His voice turned a little weak. Just barely. You see, I'm not actually scared of dying. I've already come to terms with this idea from a very young age. I'm not really talented like you and the others, and so when the time truly comes, I'll probably die. Haha. Letting out a small laugh, Small Snake bitterly laughed. I bet you'd curse at me when you see this. Shut up. The only way you can truly die is from being overworked. Raising his shoulders wide, his voice deepened as he tried to impersonate me. Piff, there's no way I'd say that. Oh please. You know yourself that I'm right. Haha. I laughed out loud. The pain in my chest only intensified. I only stopped once I saw Small Snake's face turn serious again. On a serious note, there's a reason why I'm scared of dying. Halfway through his sentence, his body started to shake a little. As I've said before, it really isn't because I'm scared of death, but, well, Small Snake slowly raised his head and stared at the ceiling. It's because I have something to do. A goal, you might say. My body leaned forward to better hear his words. Meanwhile, I used my arms to wipe my eyes. As if synchronized with me, he also wiped his eyes with his arm. In case you were wondering, my name is Brian. It's the name that my mother gave to me, and a name I slowly became unfamiliar with after her death. It wasn't a name I wanted anyone else to know, but after having stayed with you for as long as I did, I don't find the need to hide it from you. Pressing both hands on the table, he slowly rose from his seat. My story really isn't that compelling, so I won't really dwell too much on it. If I had to break it down in simple words, it would be, my mother was killed by someone whom I thought of as a close friend. Brother? Small Snake's teeth clenched as he stared at the camera. He then inhaled deeply, doing his best to hold back the anger and despair that were visible on his face. He closed his eyes and opened them again quickly. There's not much I know about him, but his name is Hemlock. Currently, he goes by the name Malik Al-Shay. Click. The video cut off halfway through his sentence. Nonetheless, I understood his words. However, that wasn't what interested me at the moment. No. I stood up from my seat and reached for the monitor. My eyes were fixed on the small bar at the bottom of the video. It was currently filled. I felt my heart sink at that moment. Grasping the monitor with both hands, I clenched it tightly. Is that really all to the video? No. It can't be. There had to be more. At least that was what I hoped for. But sadly there wasn't. And it was only then that it finally sank into my heart. Small Snake was dead. Ding. Ding. Equals. Synchronization complete. Equals. Kevin opened his eyes and saw a prompt appear in front of his vision. That wasn't all. Equals. Mission reward. Minor rank up A-, A+. Equals. A burst of energy spread across his body and Kevin felt the world around him spin. The muscles on his body became firmer and his head became clearer. He felt a sudden burst of euphoria in his body. But in spite of all the changes that were happening around him, his gaze was locked toward the ceiling of his room. Currently, his eyes were not very well focused. He had a similar expression to someone who has just seen a ghost. Haha. A hollow laugh eventually escaped from his lips. Raising his hand to cover his face, he silently mumbled. Ben tu duong kong den tu dun got. Mot awai truok kai din guvaban isi jayam 16 kilograms trong tu tuan. Su that bat ngo. Dan ong lon tu wei tikfu nu trevi dunai. Ads by Pub Future. Ah, I understand now. Thinking back at what he saw in the synchronization visions, a bitter and sad smile spread across his face. Everything finally makes sense. The previous questions he had been asking himself, about why he couldn't defeat the Demon King after all the loops, about Ren's regressions, about the Demon King and the Akashic records, he finally had all the answers. Ha ha ha. Another hollow laugh escaped from his lips. And here I thought Ren was the crazy one. Turns out I'm way worse than he is. A lot worse. Kevin closed his eyes. The dazzling red of his crimson eyes glistened. His expression then slowly started to morph before gradually becoming expressionless. I've already reached this point. There's no turning back anymore. Chapter 608 2 years. The sky was slowly darkening as the sun proceeded to set. A misty orange layer began to envelop the sky. This was typically the time when people would come back home from their jobs. Today was different, however. Triannual Hero Ranking Assembly. At the moment, everyone was tuned onto one specific event, whether they were watching it on their TVs or another available gadget. The Hero Ranking Assembly. The assembly that would determine the ranks of the top heroes of the world. At first, it didn't seem all that great, but it was important to highlight that the central government would provide financial support as well as amazing chances for all of the top rankers. Not only that, but the fame attributed to becoming a ranker wasn't something to be taken lightly. Large guilds would salivate at the prospect of hiring a ranker, and the resources made available to them would be substantially more than in the past. If that wasn't all, those who made it to the top 20 in the rankings would also be given some form of legislative power. An illustration of such power would be the ability to cast a vote while determining a crucial matter affecting humanity's future. Essentially, the stronger you were, the more power you held. I wonder what rank Ren will get. Amanda mumbled as she fixed her gaze on the TV on the wall across from her. The TV was rather enormous, taking almost half of the wall, and the images it showed were clear and of the highest possible quality. It had the effect of making one wonder if they were actually there if one wasn't paying attention. Her hand reached to her right as she relaxed on a sofa, toward a tiny bag of chips. Amanda felt a tiny hand reach out for her hand as soon as she took a chip. "Brother is the best," Nola commented while she took the chip from Amanda's hand, leaving her speechless. "He sure is." A small and helpless smile spread across her face when she looked at Nola. "Your brother will definitely get a high rank." "What about first?" "That's not possible, Nola." Another voice echoed from the other side of the room. The voice belonged to none other than Samantha Dover, Rin and Nola's mom. "Your brother has barely turned 24. There's no way he can rank first. It would already be a miracle if he ranked anywhere near the hundreds." Samantha set a few plates on the modest wooden table in the living room and tilted her head to face Amanda. "Actually, what rank is he?" "No idea." Amanda shook her head. Despite all the time she spent with Ron over the years, his rank was still an enigma to her. She knew it was high, but she didn't know just how high. It wasn't something that came up in their conversations. "It's starting," a soft, deep voice echoed. Ren's father had just walked into the room. The moment that happened, the television screen went black, and Amanda saw her mother's reflection. She was currently seated next to Nola. Meeting Amanda's gaze on the screen, she sadly said, "I'm sure your dad will be devastated to know that you're more worried about Ren than him." Amanda merely shrugged at her mother's words. She already had an idea of what rank her father would get, so she wasn't particularly interested. At least, not as much as she was interested in knowing what placement Ren would get. She figured it would be in the early hundreds and perhaps even in the two-digit figures, but knowing Ren, she knew that estimates were worthless. He wasn't someone that could be predicted using common sense. The rankings are determined by taking into account a number of elements: strength, accomplishments, and overall contributions to the growth and advancement of humanity. In a spacious auditorium filled with round tables and benches, a firm, solemn voice resounded. Rowan Kilimer, a representative of the central government, took the stage in front of a tiny wooden podium while donning a pair of squared spectacles and a crisp gray suit. His hair was well brushed back and he had a rather solid frame with broad shoulders. The top individuals who are currently existing in the human realm have been ranked after taking the aforementioned aspects into account. This event aims to make the world aware of their accomplishments. A large chandelier with brightly glistening light bulbs in the shape of crystals vividly lit the area. There were more than 1,000 people seated on the chairs beneath the chandelier. Though it wasn't obvious at a glance, the pressure that came out from each one of the individuals present was terrifying. Enough to make any regular person faint at the mere breath. Near the back of the room, not too far from them and standing behind a transparent blue barrier, a number of figures silently moved the cameras to focus on the faces of numerous profiles while quietly coordinating with each other to get the best shot. Over 1,000 different individuals are gathered today for the new ranking assignments. Some will find themselves dropping out of the rankings, while some others might find themselves entering the rankings for the first time in their lives. Rowan raised his head and swept his gaze over the 1,000 of individuals present. "With regard to the benefits of being a ranker, I won't go into great depth. Everyone present should already be familiar with this." Rowan laid his arm on the wooden podium and turned to face the opposite direction. Then, elevating his spectacles with the index finger of his other hand, he raised his hand and pointed to his right, where a large monitor was situated. It was necessary to mention that there was another monitor of comparable size on the opposite end, to the left. "It will take some time until we get to the top 20, so I'll start disclosing the lower rankings right away. For those that are called up, please remain seated on your chairs. There will not be speeches." A picture suddenly showed on the two displays behind him as he pressed the right side of his glasses. Depicted on the picture was the image of a burly man with red hair and fiery brows. Next to his name was a shining golden symbol, Top 500, with his name in white not too far from it. "Albert Bray, first-time nominee. Congratulations for making it in the ranks." The monitors behind switched and started to play short clips of the man known as Albert Bray. On the monitors, the people attending were able to catch a glimpse of his skills from the short clips that were playing. His fighting style was akin to that of orcs, where he would rip through anything in his path. While everyone else's focus was on the monitors, The cameras were trained on Albert Bray, who was seated at the rear of the room with his arms crossed. Although his back was straight and his face was expressionless, it was obvious from the slight curl of his lips that he was trying to hide his joy. Nonetheless, no one would point this out. After all, he had just become a ranker. One of the most respected people in the world. Who would dare mess with such a figure? He's pretty good. Kevin quietly commented to himself while he stared at the video on the monitors. Carefully analyzing Albert's movements, he was rather impressed. Well, at least for someone of his level. Kevin took his eyes away from the monitors. Although he was impressed by his skills, that was all there was to it. Just impressed. Kevin's strength had increased significantly over the previous 2 years, and he no longer viewed someone in the top 500 as a challenge. He wasn't being arrogant, but it was simply how things were. If he had to make an estimate, he was at least within the hundreds. Where is he? Kevin took his eyes away from Albert and nonchalantly scanned the room with his eyes. They soon paused toward a certain individual sitting near the front. I wonder why he's decided to come. He was none other than Rin. His appearance surprised Kevin quite a bit. Never in his life did he expect Rin to attend a meeting such as this one. His displeasure for such events was quite well known by everyone that knew him. He never really tried to hide it. Right as Kevin's eyes paused on his figure, his eyes squinted a little. Crossing his arms together, he leaned back on his chair and carefully scrutinized him. He looked to be in serious thought as an expressionless look adorned his face. He didn't seem to be amused by what he was seeing. Rather, he seemed to be thinking deeply about something else. It was like his mind was not in the event. At least, that was what Kevin could deduce from simply glancing at him. He had no idea if it was true or not. He had a rather hard time figuring out Ren's thoughts, especially in light of what happened 2 years ago. He was no longer acting or behaving in the same manner as before. He was in some ways much nicer than before, but at the same time a lot more reserved. He used to make crude jokes and remarks, but those days were over as he now no longer bothered doing so. In a way, his change was sad but necessary at the same time. I'm also the same, aren't I? Kevin lowered his head and stared at his 2 hands which were resting on his knees. That vision he saw, it drastically changed his worldview. He could no longer see the world as he did in the past. Wrinkles slowly started to form on his pants as he clenched them. It was the only way. Next up, Moreland Jones of Hell's Cat Guild. A new name was called out after Albert's name was mentioned. More and more names began to show up on the screen after that. Next up, Jessica Blaine of Raging Fist Guild. Next up, Luke Runder of the Union. A growing number of people approached the stage while Kevin was in the middle of his thoughts. Rankings from the 500s to the 200s were beginning to emerge gradually. The majority of those in attendance made an effort to control their reactions, but it was inevitable that some would express their happiness and others their disappointment at their overall results. Next up, Donna Longburn of the Locke Academy. Jolting Kevin out of his thoughts, he heard a familiar name. Lifting his head, he spotted Donna seated on one of the seats near him. She was wearing a stylish black one-piece outfit that suited her hair and accentuated her curves to perfection. Her eyes were complemented by a big purple necklace that dangled from her chest. From the last time he saw her, she hadn't aged a single day. Raising his head to stare at the monitors, Kevin focused his attention on her highlights. Compared to the ones he had seen 3 years ago, her highlights weren't much. It was clear that she had been focusing on school duties rather than making any achievements. It was also why her ranking didn't increase by much. It was still nonetheless an increase, which was always good. Top 107. The golden numbers hang beside her name. When the cameras at the back of the room pointed at her, she gave a simple smile and the people around her clapped. Her moment only lasted for about a minute before a new name was called up. Next up. This continued for a little bit more until Kevin finally heard his name. Next up, Kevin Voss of the Union. Kevin felt thousands of eyes pause on his body when his name was called out. Not minding the eyes of the people present, he calmly smiled. The reactions of the people around him were something he expected. He was already ranked in the top 100 while he was just 24 years old. A feat that was on par with Monica's, who at the same age had been classified roughly on the same level as him. No, rather, he had achieved the feat a year earlier than her. With the fact that she was no SS-ranked, Kevin's prospects were especially promising. Enough to justify the enthralled reactions of those around him. Additionally, No one thought Kevin's position was unusual because his accomplishments were obvious to everyone. Unlike Rin, Kevin wasn't one that kept a low profile. 94. The golden numbers appeared beside his name. Another wave of applause enshrouded the auditorium. Next up. But just like Donna, his moment didn't last for long as a new name was called up. And with each new name that was called up, the louder the clapping became. Kevin kept his gaze on Rin throughout the entire time. He was genuinely curious about what his rankings would be. Top 60, top 50, top 40. Time passed and more names began to be called up. There were hints of surprise on Kevin's face as he realized that Ren's name had still not been called out yet. Looks like he's serious about this. His surprise didn't come from Ren's high ranking, but from the fact that he didn't hide his strength like in the past. Normally, he would have probably only shown a skill level that was near to his. But for him to go this low, there was clearly something he wanted from this. Top 30. Top 20. Kevin's expression was very serious by the time the top 20th ranker was revealed. He sat up straight on his chair. This might become troublesome. Kevin took a glance at the people in the auditorium. None of the people present currently knew what was about to happen, and Kevin could only imagine the effects that Ren's announcement would have on some of the people present. Without a doubt, more than half of the people present would show their discontent. Ren's age wasn't really a factor. Rather, his lack of notoriety was the main reason. He only had one significant accomplishment, the conference, and that was all. His strength was unknown, his achievements were unknown, and his contributions to humanity were unknown. His lack of presence would certainly cause quite a scene, and Kevin could feel it. Nonetheless, he leaned back in his chair. I'm sure he must have something planned. In no way would Rin come here without any plans. Next up, Rin Dover of C.S.A. Mercenary Guild. Silence. Just like Kevin predicted, the auditorium fell into a state of silence. Immediately after that, everyone's gaze focused on one particular individual. Black hair, blue eyes, and a calm look on his face. He turned his head and smiled as he sensed everyone's attention briefly focusing on him. His smile, while appeared incredibly false, at least to Kevin. As everyone turned to stare at one another with suspicious expressions on their faces, whispers resounded throughout the hall. What's going on? I think I know him. Wait, isn't he 24 as well? Ranked 18? What's going on? With Ren's information displayed next to him, everyone's eyes grew wide when they learned of his age. The look of suspicion only increased. Ren's accomplishments were simply too much for some of the individuals in attendance to comprehend, as their faces changed. If they could hardly accept the idea that Kevin was among the top 100, then Ren's rank was simply not something many of the people present could digest. Regardless, no one dared to voice out their objections. They weren't exactly stupid. There'd be no way the central government and the union would allow something like this to happen without reason. Nepotism? Bribery? There were multiple reasons that could have contributed to Ren's rank. But his capabilities were not one that flashed in the minds of most people present. It was just too monstrous of a feat for them to accept. Judging from your looks, it appears as though some of you are unsatisfied with his rank? Kevin and a large portion of the audience were shocked to hear Rowan's voice echo across the entire auditorium. This was the first time that he had not followed the script. What's going on? The sudden turn of events aroused Kevin's interest. His eyes once again paused on Rin. He had a faint inkling that this was orchestrated by him and someone else. Rowan looked around the auditorium. Several elements are considered while deciding the rankings, and Mr. Dover over here meets the requirements to get the ranking that he has achieved. We can guarantee you that there has been no foul play when deciding the rankings. His voice echoed loudly in a serious and harsh manner. In spite of his words, a large majority of the people present still didn't seem convinced. None of them voiced their dissatisfaction, but their expression said everything. We don't trust you. Rowan's eyebrows furrowed when he noticed the atmosphere around the auditorium. Just as he was about to say something, Ren, who was leaning his head against his arm, suddenly extended his hand and tapped the air. Ding! The auditorium echoed with a crisp sound, reminiscent of two glasses clicking against each other, as ripples spread outwardly from Ren's fingertip. They spread throughout every corner of the auditorium in the time it took for the heart to beat. The air began to fracture as an immense pressure began to settle over the entire region, making breathing more difficult. Sword rays progressively emerged from the air fractures in a slow manner, resulting in some of the audience members' faces to flash with horror. Within the span of a couple of seconds, the entire hall was filled with sword rays that hovered the heads of everyone in the room like a guillotine waiting to be released. Gulp. Gulps were audible throughout, and several of the attendees' cheeks became pale. Their reactions were enough to prove to the people present just how domineering Ren's actions were. On another note, Ren didn't specifically target the individuals in the back, the ones recording everything, which was fortunate for them. However, they also had trouble breathing due to the intensely tense mood that pervaded the auditorium. "I think that's enough." A crisp voice rang in the air. An orange veil blanketed the air after the voice echoed, and the sword rays that hung in the air disappeared. The overbearing pressure that was pervading the air disappeared, and a short and beautiful figure appeared in the middle of the hall. Silently glaring at Ren, she placed both hands on her hips. "That was a bit much, don't you think?" "I apologize." Ren disinterestedly looked at the people present before focusing his attention back on the monitors that hung on the walls. Monica's eyes focused on Ren for a couple of seconds before she turned around and looked at Rowan, who signaled to her that everything was all right. Nodding her head, she disappeared from the spot and the air became breathable again. It goes without saying that this only pertained to locations farther from Ren. The air was still very tense for those who were close to Ren. Only a select few people, Kevin included, were able to maintain their composure. At this very moment, Kevin's brows were furrowed tightly. Right now, Monica was on his mind. Although she tried to hide it, Kevin caught sight of her palm trembling in the aftermath of the attack. The thought made him squint his eyes. Were my eyes playing tricks, or? Chapter 609. 2 years. He's changed a lot since the last time I saw him. Donna quietly thought to herself as her gaze fixed on Ren, who was seated a few tables ahead of her. Even she felt pressured at the time he revealed his strength in front of everyone. The power he displayed. It was frightening. I knew he was talented, but I didn't think it was to this point. One could not come close to describing the rate of his progress. It was simply frightening. To the point where both Monica and Kevin were left behind. She was more shocked to find that not much time had elapsed since she had taught him at the lock. About 6 years. In about that period of time, he had transformed from a typical G-ranking student to someone whose strength had surpassed hers. How monstrous. She mumbled to herself once more. In the past, she thought that Monica was the most talented human she knew, but it was clear to her that there was someone else that was above her. It was none other than Ren. His strength isn't the only thing that changed about him, his demeanor also seemed to have changed. When Donna looked at him more closely, she saw that he was different from how he had been in the past. Around him there was a somewhat melancholy vibe. One that left Donna feeling uneasy. It was sufficient to make her face turn grave. Just what happened during the few years that I haven't seen him? He wasn't exactly cheerful, but he sure as heck wasn't like how he was now. Kind of worried her a little. I should probably talk to him after this is over. Thus, she made her mind up to talk to him after the meeting was over. It had been a couple of years since they had come to contact with each other. Might as well catch up a little. Bang. My fist smashed against the side of the bathroom wall, and fine miniature crevices extended all the way toward the ceiling of the bathroom. The meeting had ended a couple of minutes ago. As expected, Octavius ranked first, and Maximus, who was previously ranked third, was now ranked second. But that wasn't what resulted in my rage. Rank 18? Seriously? After all that hard work? I gritted my teeth as a burst of rage erupted from deep within my body. I was upset with my slow improvement rather than my poor ranking. I had been working hard for the past 2 years. Really hard. During that period, I went through a phase of relative strength increase, helped by the air's increasing mana density and the merging with the strength of my former self. My efforts paid off, and I was able to advance to S+ level in just 2 years. I was just a little shy of reaching SS- rank. But too slow. I muttered through my clenched teeth. 2 years. That was how much time I had left before my other self would take over or the curse that was in me would activate. 2 fucking years. That was how long I had to live. The rate at which I was progressing was slow. Too fucking slow. I miscalculated. I didn't come to the meeting and exposed my strength on a whim. Rather, I did it with a goal in mind. The meeting today was important to me for a certain purpose. The monolith and the Union's ceasefire was set to expire the following month. and I would only have a chance to influence the situation and participate if I had a high enough ranking. I had previously anticipated that I would already be SS-rank by the time the meeting started. However, I had severely underestimated just how hard it was to break through to the next level. In the end, I only ended up ranking 18th, which was far beneath the rank I wanted it to be. Bang. Damn it. The thought sent me into another fit of rage. I only stopped when I felt a wet sensation running down my nose. I saw a noticeable red stain on my hand when I wiped the area with my arm. Blood. My left arm spasmed a little and my vision blurred. This lasted for a good minute before stopping. Not again. I lowered my head and stared at my trembling hand. Fuck. A curse silently left my mouth while more blood dropped down from my nose. Wiping the blood with my arm, I raised my head to stare at my reflection. What's wrong, nervous? My ears picked up a recognizable voice as my reflection moved independently. Slowly my face sank. Whew. Taking another deep breath, I was able to calm myself down and washed my face with some water. My sudden outburst came as a result of his personality merging with mine. It was starting to be increasingly difficult for me to contain my emotions. You not going to say anything? My hands paused on my face while water dripped down toward the sink. Slowly raising my head, I glared at the mirror, or to be more precise, my reflection. Our eyes met. Are you still hung up on what happened to Small Snake? 2 years have already passed, move on. Why even bother with the monolith? I closed the valve without saying anything. Only then did I open my mouth to speak. If you expect me to give you my body after what you've done, you can only give up. Oh. The eyebrows of my reflection raised. Do you think I mind if I have to wait a few more years? The seal Jezebeth placed on you will put an end to things even if I don't take control of your body and do it myself. You've lost no matter what you do. Right. I gripped the side of the sink with all my strength. Cracks slowly started to form on the porcelain sink. About Small Snake, what makes you so sure that I was the one behind it? It could just be you blaming me for your incompetence. Hearing his words, my head slowly raised. You think I'm stupid? I asked while calmly staring at the mirror. My voice became icier as I drew nearer to the mirror. Sure, I did have a fault in his death, but do you seriously think that I wouldn't know this was something you devised? I may be stupid at times, but I'm not mentally challenged. I tightened the grip on the sink as I recalled the events of 2 years ago. I could sense it at the time. Jezebeth sustained damage. He may have not been a clone, but he wasn't exactly in top shape. Not only that, but his injuries worsened shortly after Kevin destroyed the core. Even if he didn't show it, I could tell. I may have not been able to defeat him, but I sure as heck would have been able to delay him, enough to buy Small Snake some time, had you lent me your strength. Even now, the events that transpired back then haunted me. Thinking of all the things I could have done to prevent such a situation from happening felt agonizing. Additionally, there is no way you could have overlooked Jezebeth's unexpected appearance. You aren't this negligent. His appearance was unquestionably something you wanted to occur. You were aware that he would show up, but despite this, you weren't concerned for my safety because you also knew that he was hurt. This shows that you had something planned, and that something was Small Snake's demise. He may not have known that this was the last loop, but I sure as heck knew that he had enough power to confront Jezebeth. Furthermore, from the enigmatic words he said after his memories stopped playing, I knew that he wasn't planning to end the loop just yet. I raised my head to glare at the mirror. You may not have set your targets on Small Snake in particular, but without a doubt you wanted someone involved to die. Without saying anything, he just looked at me. The silence persisted for a little bit before he opened his mouth to speak. You're right, I could have helped you and avoided his death. In a way, you can say that I did plan for this. My heart tightened when I heard his words. I knew it. As I never attempted to conceal it in the first place, there is no use in lying about it now. Jezebeth's imminent presence and everyone's appearance on the planet were things that I was aware would happen. Even if I may not be able to completely anticipate what will happen, major factors like that are indeed something that can be predicted. And from there, changing little things to make them go your way isn't exactly too hard. Why do you think you were able to see the memories for as long as you did? And why do you think you were even allowed to see them? But I'm sure you know exactly why I did what I did, right? I ground my teeth. Nonetheless, he continued speaking. You see, with that shaky resolve you had at the time, there was simply no way for you to defeat Jezebeth. Quite plainly, the likelihood that you would succeed in fighting him was dwindling as you began to stand still. My decisions were driven by need. Small snake had to perish in order to enhance your... Bam. I punched the mirror with all my force. The glass shattered and shards fell on the floor. The reflection in the mirror vanished. Looking around the room, my breath felt heavy. I don't have time for this. I then turned around and no longer bothered staring at the mirror, or the room which was half destroyed at this point. The words my other self said did hold some weight. They weren't necessarily wrong. My resolve back then to defeat Jezebeth was half-hearted. Back then it was merely out of necessity. Something that I needed to do for the sake of doing it and stopping the world from being destroyed. Now, however, it was personal. Jezebeth needed to die. And the same went with the other me. They both needed to die, and in the 2 years I had left, I would make sure I would do everything that was within my powers to make sure it happened. Ding. At that moment, my phone rang and I received a message. My face softened when I took out my phone and checked the message. You need to work on your fake smile. It was from Amanda. The hell? I almost burst out laughing when I saw the emoji she sent. It wasn't that bad, was it? I didn't think anyone would notice my fake smile. I seriously hoped it wasn't that bad. Image.jake. An image of me appeared on the screen. Amanda's text came after. It was enough to make my toes curl in. I pinched the screen with my fingers to get a better look at myself. Shit, it really does look terrible. Actually, terrible wouldn't be enough to cover it.in the picture she sent. It was glaringly obvious that my smile was fake. No wonder Amanda's toes curled in. The same was happening to me right now. Ugh, I guess you do have a point. Right? What's with the emojis? Anyways, when are you coming back? Nola says she misses you. Give me an hour. I didn't think I would need any more time with that. The only thing I needed to do was talk to Waylon and that was it. Ads by Pub Future. Hey. Nola said that she will be waiting for you. Degree? 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 Aren't you having way too much fun with the emojis? Am I? Degree? Degree? Yes, you are. What are you going to do about it? Dash. Degree. I sent an emoji of my own. Serves you right. I then turned off my phone and placed it in my pocket. Shaking my head, I made my way out of the bathroom. Unknowingly, a thin smile spread across my face. I guess not everything was as dark as it seemed. Chapter 6, 2 years. 3. That actually hurt. Monica strolled into a small hallway softly muttering to herself. Her feet eventually stopped moving. She lowered her head to examine her shaking hand before carefully clenching it. Didn't they tell him to go easy? His attack or display of strength was a lot stronger than Monica had anticipated. Everything was scripted. At least Ren's attack was supposed to be. Monica knew from the very beginning that Ren was going to show off a little in order to silence the people. It had to be done so that the reputation of the Union and the central government wouldn't plummet. It was something that was discussed beforehand. Ren had kept a far too low profile during the previous few years, which had led to his name losing favor with the general public. The incidents that occurred at the conference were still fresh in many people's minds, so they didn't quickly forget his name, but his lack of notable accomplishments or notoriety after that caused him to lose a lot of his previously obtained fame. In a sense, his actions were necessary. They had to be done in order to quickly establish himself as a big name in the human domain. I'm sure everyone will remember his name now. Monica grimaced while she shook her hand. Fuck, that hurts. She murmured under her breath. Ren's growth left even her speechless. Despite the fact that she had a strong sense of competition, she had no desire to compete with Ren. No point in competing in a losing battle. Without a doubt, he would overtake her sooner or later. Life is so unfair. The thought made her shake her head. I kind of miss those days where Donna and I would beat him and Kevin senseless to help them progress. In just a few years he's already this strong. It makes me feel old, and I'm only in my mid-30s. Age was a sensitive topic for women, and Monica was no exception. She detested knowing that she was getting older. Well, at least I'm not as bad as Donna. Mention her age to her, and you'd find yourself stuck on a wall before you know it. Tucking her chin under her hand, Monica thought to herself. Thinking about Kevin, he sure has improved quite a lot too. Although not as much as Ren, still an impressive level of growth. He was about S rank now. Compared to Ren, it didn't sound all that spectacular, but it had to be remembered that S rankers typically never placed in the top 100. They were typically between 200 and 300. Top 100 was solely intended for people who attained a S+ rank. This alone demonstrated the numerous contributions he had made throughout the years. Additionally, despite the fact that he was still not quite there in terms of actual rank, his strength was also judged to be in the S+ range. That alone went to show how amazing of a talent he was. Sigh, I truly feel helpless when I think about the two of them. Hanging her head low, Monica resumed her steps before she eventually stopped in front of a large wooden door. Vice President of the Union. Seeing the metal engravings on the door, Monica grasped the handle and opened the door. She then leisurely entered the office. Click. A spacious office, roughly the size of a tennis court, welcomed her. A person was seated at a sizable wooden desk near the room's end. He was conversing with someone at the time. It took Monica one glance to identify who the individual was. Looks like you're already here, Ren. Smiling, Monica closed the door behind her. In the midst of my discussion with Waylon, the door behind me burst open and Monica appeared. Looks like you're already here, Ren. Sure. I lazily waved at her before I turned my attention back to Waylon. When is the meeting going to be held? In less than a week's time. Waylon replied in a stern tone, his eyes sparing Monica a single glance. I'll give you the details when the time comes, but you better not be late. I understand. I quietly nodded his head. Then, seemingly recalling something, I asked, how's the progress with regards to the alliance? Over the previous 2 years, I had not shown any interest in anything having to do with the outside world, so I was unaware of the current state of the alliance with the other races. Now that I was planning on taking action, I was curious as to how things were progressing. It's slow, but there has been some progress. Waylon replied in a somewhat helpless tone. Even though the other races seem keen to form an alliance with us, we're still negotiating a few minor things. Such as the amount of power and influence our votes will have when making important decisions, the exchange of technology and raw materials. Just the boring stuff, you know? It really does sound boring. Monica commented while she sat down on the seat next to me. She then reached forward and took a piece of candy out of a tiny glass dish that was laying on Waylon's desk. Unwrapping the candy, she tapped on my shoulder and showed me her hand. You'll soon be able to attend such meetings, so allow me to offer you some advice. Pinch your hand in the area between your thumb and index finger. When you're about to nod off, it's a terrific method to wake you up. I see. I slowly nodded my head while he listened to Monica's random ramblings. Waylon, on the other hand, only shook his head in frustration. It was obvious from the expression on his face that he was used to this. Alright, I better get going. I stood up from my seat once I managed to hear everything that I wanted to hear. At the exact moment I stood up, I felt Monica's gaze pause on me. You're already leaving? Yeah. I replied while turning around to face the door. I have an appointment after this, so I won't be able to stay here for long. Well, alright. Monica reclined back in her chair while placing a candy on her tongue. I guess I'll see you next week when you attend the meeting. Will do. Hold on a second, Ren. Waylon called out for me just as I was about to leave. My feet came to a pause. Yes. I almost forgot to mention this, but Octavius wants to talk to you one of these days. I'm not sure about what he wants to talk to you about, but it seems like it's about something the two of you had previously discussed. My brows furrowed when I heard his words. I then nodded my head. Sure, tell him I'll meet him before the meeting in a week's time. As soon as I finished speaking, I opened the door and left. I was going to be late if I didn't hurry. Click. Waylon speechlessly stood up as he gazed at Ren's departing back. He continued to stand for a couple of seconds before he fell back on his chair and sighed. What am I? Their messenger. He grumbled to himself while clenching his hair with both hands. Why couldn't Ren and Octavius just talk to each other like any other human being would? Why did he always have to be the messenger between the two of them? This wasn't the first time it happened, as it had been a recurring thing for quite a while now. To make matters worse, it wasn't as if he could do anything about the situation. As the union's vice president, he was responsible for meeting all of Octavius and the head's demands. It was basically his job whether he liked it or not. The more he thought about it, the more powerless he felt. Maybe I should just quit my job. A soft whisper escaped his lips. Don't say that. Monica spoke after overhearing his comment. She then handed him a candy. Here, have a candy. It'll help you alleviate your mood. Click. I looked to my left and right as I closed the door behind me before heading for the exit of the building. It was about time I returned him. Or so I thought. You made me wait long enough. A familiar voice echoed from behind and my feet came to a pause. I then slowly turned around. Kevin. Been a while. I swung around and feigned a smile when I spotted Kevin. How long has it been? About a year or so. Wanted to meet you when we were at the ceremony, but well, I was a bit too busy. I know I saw you. Kevin's popularity far outstripped mine. It was hard for me to not notice him when he was always the center of attention. A far cry from what I was. Nevertheless, that was what I wanted, so I wasn't one to complain. So, looking toward my right and left to check if there was anyone else present nearby, I slowly asked. Is there anything you wanted to say? Kevin titled his head. We haven't seen each other for a year. Thought I'd catch up a bit. There's nothing I really want to talk about. Oh. I casually replied as an awkward silence permeated the air. Neither one of us talked for the next couple of seconds. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was, but there was some strange awkwardness and uneasiness that I couldn't quite shake. I dismissed it by assuming that it was because we hadn't seen each other in a year or two as both of us were extremely busy. How have you been? Kevin started, scratching the side of his face with an awkward-looking smile. I'm alright, just a bit annoyed. Annoyed? Yeah, to be honest, I would have rather not revealed my strength. The only reason I chose to reveal my strength was for the sake of getting a commanding position when dealing with the matters regarding the monolith. This was something that I couldn't give up on. A look of understanding appeared on Kevin's face. As expected. You really did have something in mind when announcing your strength like that. Yeah, if not for that I would have just been like Jean. Switching the conversation to Jean, Kevin's brows furrowed a bit. Speaking about him, I wonder why he didn't come here. With his strength, they should have no trouble making it to the rankings. Same for the guy in your group. The forgetful guy. You mean Liam? Yeah, him. Kevin snapped his finger in remembrance. I shrugged my shoulders. Beats me, they must have their motives. Well, at least Jean, Liam just isn't interested in this kind of stuff. The rankings weren't exactly accurate. There were many people out there that didn't disclose their strengths, such as Liam and Jean in this case. Had they disclosed their strength, they would have defiantly knocked a couple of people out of the rankings. Especially Liam, who was probably going to rank close to me. Now that I think about it, there's a chance he might rank higher than I did. Without a doubt, he has improved a lot over the last few years. I've been exercising like crazy for the past 2 years, in between spending time with my family and trying to find whatever way I could to find a way to cure my soul. From exploring dungeons to engaging in combat with everyone in the mercenary group. Well, I do say everyone, but it was mostly just Liam and Angelica. And it was exactly because I sparred with Liam almost every day that I knew just how frightening his strength was at the moment. At times, I wondered why the Akashic records didn't choose him instead of Kevin. His talent was simply out of this world. Why are you looking at me like that? I was jolted out of my thoughts by Kevin's voice. Blinking a couple of times, I tilted my head. What do you mean? You were looking at me weirdly just a second ago. Really? Must have done it unconsciously. Kevin squinted his eyes for a moment before he shook his head. Never mind that for now, I'll take my leave now. It was nice talk. Wait a second. I grabbed Kevin's shoulder before he prepared to leave. I suddenly remembered something. His face conveyed a faint indication of discomfort as he lowered his head to look at my palm pressing against his shoulder. I wasn't really sure whether it was just my imagination because it appeared and vanished as quickly as it came. Yeah? He asked, and I snapped out of it. Must have just been mind. Nothing unusual with how messed up it is at the moment. I need a favor. I took a deep breath. Then meeting his eyes, I said, help me set a portal for Amora. A/N. I feel compelled to write this since everyone has been asking and making random facts up as to why I'm not uploading. The reason for the lack of updates is simple. I'm not currently at home. I don't have Wi-Fi, and so I can't really edit my chapters that need Wi-Fi for me to do. I have not stopped writing, it's just that I can't edit. This takes me far longer than writing a chapter, and I need connection since I use several writing tools. So when I get back, I'll just release all of the missing chapters in a big mass release. Oh, and I don't know where this rumor comes from, but I don't have a sister.